The opinions expressed in this podcast are individual and not necessarily representative of Spirit Live or Toronto Metropolitan University. Thank you for listening. Also be advised that there's a sensitive content warning for this episode relating to suicide, self-harm, and other mental health topics. Welcome to Shutter Sports Girl Talk, your home for all things women's sports. We've got everything from athletes breaking barriers to industry professionals breaking the glass ceiling. I'm your host, Katie LeBoudelaire, and today I'm joined by Team U Bold Women's Soccer goalkeeper, MLSE Game Operations Crew, and youth soccer coach Elisa Paolucci. So today we're joined by Elisa.
Hello.
So Elisa, you kind of touch women in sports from every angle. You're an athlete, a coach, you work in media and operations a little bit. Why don't you start with a little background of how you got into sports and became so passionate about?
Okay. So, I think I started playing soccer when I was like 3. So, my family is like really deep rooted in sports. I have an older brother and a younger brother and a dad who were always involved in sport. My dad played football. Growing up, he was a quarterback. Even my mom was involved in sports. She was a volleyball player. Like, they were both pretty high level. My brother played soccer and hockey, so it was like kind of like just something to follow in through. My dad had been coaching soccer for like 15 years probably by the time that I was born. Like, he had been coaching since he was a teenager, so it was only kind of natural that like when I was like literally 3, they're like, okay, you're playing soccer. And I was like, okay. I really hated it at first. I was that kid who would like pick flowers, like do cartwheels. I like was terrible, but I really wanted to continue doing it because my brother did it, so stuck with it for a long time. And took a little bit of a break when I was maybe like 7, but once I was like 8, I saw my brother was like really talented at soccer, and I was like, okay, this is like, now I need to get serious. I really want to do it. So started taking it a little bit more serious. I was such a hard worker, but a terrible player, and I literally just run up and down the field, but somehow I ended up being a goalie when I started playing rep soccer when I was like 8, and I just thought, like, you know what, I hate running, so maybe this will be better for me, and it ended up being the best decision I ever made. So yeah.
Yeah, and then did you play any other sports growing up, or was it always soccer?
Yeah, so I played lacrosse a little bit, hockey. I hated skating. I was a very like moody child, I would say. And every little thing that bothered me, like, you could tell, like, I would cry playing hockey. I loved watching it always because my brother also played hockey, but I hated, like, it sounds so stupid, but like my feet would hurt in skates.
Oh, no, they do.
So
Yeah.
I did not want to play hockey anymore. I also did karate. I'm 3 belts away from my black belt, so like took that pretty seriously.
Yeah.
And I played volleyball a lot growing up too. So yeah.
Yeah, so a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And then you touched on it a little bit, but in soccer, was there any moment at all where it was like, okay, now you're going in net, or was it like no one else volunteered? Or?
Yeah, it was so literally, I remember I was like such a quiet kid. Like, well, I was a very like selective kid, so I was either like super loud or super quiet. And the team that I originally played on, like, it was like my parents were shocked that I made the team. Like, they were like, "Are you sure?" Like, it was like the biggest club, like Woodbridge. Every kid wanted to play on it. Like, my parents literally, because they're very well versed in sports, so they were like, "Are you sure? Like, we understand if she's playing on a B team or a C team, like, she doesn't, like, we don't think she should make the A team." And I made the A team somehow. And they were like, yeah, no. And I would always watch the girl who was going in net. I was like, man, I kind of want to do that. And then by the end of the winter, I was cut from that team, like, obviously. And I went to a new team, and like we had our first exhibition game, and they were like, oh, does anybody want to go in net? And I was like, I know my parents are going to yell at me, but I like raised my hand, and they were like, put your hand down. And I went in net, and somehow I did really well, and it just stuck from like there on out. So yeah.
You said along the lines like it was mostly your brother that really made you want to take it seriously. Was there any moment that you like remember where you're like, oh, this is something I want to do, or was it just kind of always something?
Yeah, so definitely like I always like thought I was like moving away from soccer. Like, I never like could have imagined that like this was like gonna be like my whole life, because it literally is now. Um, but yeah, I definitely say like my brother played a big role in it, and I just like saw like the competitiveness like he had in it. So I was like that really like intrigued me. I think there was like one year, it was like maybe the year or 2 years before I started playing rep soccer, like I played with these other girls too who like really loved soccer, and I was like like I was a year younger and like I looked up to them so much and I was like, wait, I want to become like really serious about it. So probably something like that.
Yeah. And then what was kind of the path from that youth team or like youth competitive team? You started in net, and then what was the trajectory of like playing competitive?
So it was a very long road. So I started playing soccer for a little club. Well, at first Woodbridge, a big club, and then obviously got cut there. And then I went to Kleinberg, where I lived there at the time also, and it was kind of like one of the smaller clubs, but it was more at my playing level, I guess you could say, at that time. And it was kind of like a group of like misfits of like kids who like literally didn't make other teams, and we lost like every game that first season except for two.
Okay.
And every game in that, like I played maybe like half a game in that, and then by the next year, things turned around and we were the best team, like crazy. I became a full-time goalie. I'd go to goalie training like I would say like every week, twice a week. So I started at like 8, I would say. So especially at that time, there weren't a lot of like girls who were solidified goalies. I was one of the only ones. So that meant I had to train with boys a lot. So throughout my whole life, I would say I trained and also later played with boys. So yeah, I stayed with that team. We became one of the top teams in Canada. From the ages of like literally 9 to 12. So I stayed with that team. We moved to an academy called Bryce when I was 12 because there were lots of politics going on as
many youth sports
as many
have.
sports. Yep. So yeah, we moved to an academy called Bryce, which my parents now actually own and operate.
Okay.
So that came a little bit later on in life. Not when I played there, but that's how we kind of got introduced to them. But loved it there. When I was there, I got the opportunity to play with both boys and girls. So the boys team didn't have a goalie, and they were like, "Hey, like, do you want to play?" And from a young age, like I was pushed by my coach. I had a really, really strict Russian coach, and it maybe like affected my mental health back then. I mean, probably still now, but it was like perfection was always the goal. So I was always a strong, I would say, goalie as a child. But yeah, so I started playing with boys and girls, and I think like when I started playing with boys, like that really like shotgunned like my growth as like a soccer goalkeeper, if you will. So after that, U13 is kind of like the stage where you start playing 11v11, and there was this new league called OPDL coming into the scene. And in soccer, there's so many different levels, unlike hockey where it's like, obviously like AAA is the highest for youth, AA, like for soccer it was so unclear, and especially OPDL being a new thing. So being that I was playing on a team that was super strong, we were one of the top teams in Canada, like at a young age, which is crazy that you're recognized at that at such a young age. Yeah. I wasn't really getting many shots at that time. And my coach, I struggled with him a lot and a lot of different factors. So my parents were like, what if we don't follow the team? Because the team was leaving to go to another club that played OPDL. We're like, what if you try something different? What if you go to a place where you're more tested and have to be a difference maker? So I ended up moving to a team in Mississauga called Dixie, where I played there from when I was 13 to I think 17 or 18, just before I went away to school. And I played on the elite team, so it wasn't OPDL, it was called the Golden Horseshoe. So sorry, we would play all the teams in like the Peel region to all the way to Niagara. So it was a really, really strong league. And it was seen as lower than OPDL, but that league had been solidified for years before OPDL, so I trusted it. And you know what? Like I went to a team that was the middle of the pack, and we worked our way up to one of the top teams. We won Ontario Cup in my final year with them, so I kind of grew with that team. And sorry, super long-winded, but in that span of time, I really like grew to be an important role on that team, and developed with the girls. And then at that time came when people are getting more serious, when some people are not. So it was definitely hard to like judge the trajectory of like the team and all my friends and the players on the team, but you kind of have to start going off on your own, and that's what I did in terms of like recruitment process. My parents were obviously like super in the know of what was going on. So having been through this before with my older brother in hockey, so started reaching out to coaches on my own, going to different combines and stuff like that. And then just ended up like going to the right places, I guess, at the right time, and ended up going to the U.S. for my first year, or half of my first year of school.
But yeah, diving into going into post-secondary, when it came time to pick a landing spot, how did you kind of end up at St. Cloud?
So it was definitely a weird process. So my recruiting process kind of happened like at the peak of COVID. So like seeing girls who were like recruited before me, I always saw them committing in like grade 9, grade 10, like super early in high school, and I always knew that that was something I wanted to do. Like I had never looked at a school in Canada in my life. Like from the time I was 12, I was like, "Okay, I'm going to play in the US." Like whatever, that's going to be my goal. And then COVID hit, and in the US, like teams didn't stop playing, but we did. So it was like definitely a really challenging time. So there's this organization called FTF, and they host these combines and these showcases, I guess you could call them. And it's players who come and like register, and it's like of all different, whatever, around the same ages. Like I remember the first one I did, it was mainly 2003s and 2004 players, some 2005s, like a little mix in there. But it's girls who are seriously looking to go play at the next level. And a lot of university coaches would be watching. And I think I went to my first one in the summer of 2021, or 2020, I would say it was 2020, yeah. Just when restrictions were being lifted a little bit.
Yeah.
And so from that, I played in that. And then what they had after that was called the Top 60. So it was the top 60 girls from all events. They didn't even have to attend a previous combine. It's just scouting from different teams were invited to play in this, and all the top coaches would be watching virtually, of course, because it was COVID. So I was invited to the top 60, and I played in that. On my own, I reached out to a lot of schools. I had the help of the head owner of FTF, Marcus Hansen, who was really instrumental in my recruiting process. He reached out to coaches for me as well, like tried to find different schools that were a good fit for me, and constantly had people like critiquing my videos and being like realistic with it, like, hey, she can play at a mid-level D1 team to a top D2 team. So it was kind of just like starting to get realistic and finding where the right fit for me was. And I was somebody who was like super specific in what I wanted to do in school as well. That's always been like of most important to me.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like finding a school that could balance like my educational and my athletic needs. And again, it was super hard to do that in COVID. So I think it was the summer before I think it was in grade 11. I was in grade 11, and I finally had like narrowed down my list of schools that I was talking to, and I went, and I literally in the summer I went for a whole week to 4 different schools. I narrowed it down to my top 4, and I went from like Florida to Pennsylvania to New York to Minnesota, and it was crazy because like it was at that time
a road trip or
planes, trains,
all
like
of it.
everything, cars. Like it was at the time where if you entered over the border, like you couldn't get back. It was so many quarantine issues. So I started in Florida at Jacksonville D1 school. I've never been a person who liked hot weather or anything like that. Absolutely did not like it there. Then I went to New York, D2 school, and I loved New York. I've always wanted to go to school in New York or Boston. And my 2 of my favorite cities in the world. Funny enough, my brothers go to school in New York and Boston, so it's like they took my dream. But
you can go visit.
Right, exactly. At least I have that. But loved that school. They probably gave me the best offer. They really, really wanted me. But at that time, I wasn't sure that I wanted to go to school right in the city, because I was like, oh, it feels like I'm going to a job. And then what was my next school that I was visiting in Pennsylvania, a little D3 school called Dickinson College, one of the top liberal arts colleges in the U.S. I could have been a lawyer in 5 years. And when I went there, I was like, okay, this was probably like one of my top choices. Like I would really, really like this school. And I went there and I practiced with the team. And I'll never forget this day. I like fainted on the field. It was like 45 degrees. I was like it was literally just like a one-on-one. And it was like such a terrible day. Like I fainted, and I was just like, oh my God, like I really want to go here. What's happening? And this was like my 3rd school of the week. And I was just like drained by that. And I was like, oh my God. And so obviously everything happens for a reason. I had to leave right away from that school to catch a plane to go to Minnesota. So I was about an hour and a half from Philly, where I flew out of, to go to Minnesota. I had to be on the field in Minnesota in St. Cloud, which is 2 hours away from the airport in Minneapolis, at 9 a.m. And there was a time change also. So I got to the airport in Philly the day before. In the afternoon, I was supposed to leave at like 5 o'clock, I would say. The plane didn't leave till like midnight. So we arrive in Minneapolis like at 3 a.m., waiting for our rental car, have to drive 2 hours to St. Cloud, and literally got like maybe 2 hours of sleep, like fully. And I go to St. Cloud, and in the morning, like I get a text from the coach being like, hey, like we might be indoors, so you're gonna need indoor shoes. And I did not have indoor shoes, so I run to go get some. And it was literally like the most like everything that could go wrong was going wrong.
Yeah.
And I was like in my head, I'm like, wow, like the school I wanted to go to, like already things were messed up. I was like, it almost felt like this was like a last resort in a way, but it wasn't. So I go there. I end up, it was like they had invited all of the top recruits, and they had an ID camp. So we were all placed on one team, kind of like the top recruits, and then the rest were just whatever. So I got to the school in the morning, and I was like somehow managed to like put myself together and just go. And I remember meeting the coaches there that I had like multiple Zoom calls with them throughout the year prior. And I remember actually like the one reason like I knew about this school was I had seen an email from them like in my inbox, and I was like, wait, I know this logo. Like I'm a big hockey fan, obviously. So I was like, they were in the Frozen Four the year before. Like I need to like respond to this school. Like it was so funny. So I was like, because they're D1 for hockey, D2 for soccer. Yeah. And again, being a big hockey fan, I was like, that's one school I need to like go and see.
Yeah.
And so I end up killing it the day like I went to go play there, and my mom just like randomly was talking to the head coach as she was watching, and she was like, "How was like your trip here?" And my mom was like, "Actually, like you wouldn't believe like
Yeah.
the issues we've had." And she was like, "Wow, like you couldn't even tell." And she was like, she spoke with so much confidence and this and that, and I was like, man, if you think like this is me confident, like just wait and see. So after that ID camp day, they kind of texted me like there's a lot of different like NCAA rules that you have to follow. So they were like, "Okay, you're gonna leave the campus, go back to your hotel, and then I'm gonna text you when you can come back, and we're gonna talk." So waited for the text, went back, and went into the office and met, and they offered me a spot on the team, presented me with a scholarship, and I was like, literally, like, after everything that happened, I was just, like, literally started crying. I was like, oh my God, like, this is the best thing that could have happened. Like, the facilities were beautiful, absolutely, like, I was just like a kid in a candy store. Like, my eyes were, like, wide open, and I was, like, in love with the place. Like, I was like, it's like awesome, and the coaches said everything like right. Like I was like, wow, this is the place for me. And yeah, then they were like, we're not gonna like accept you saying yes today. Like you're gonna go home, you're gonna take a week to think about it, and then they're like, and then like we'll talk next week, and then if you still want to say yes, like say yes. They just wanted me to be sure, and yeah, so that's how I kind of got there.
Yeah.
Long-winded story, but yeah.
Yeah. No, the process is so different, and I know you were saying like especially finding the right one for your program, and there you were in what was it?
Sports management.
And like I had the same problem like looking around for schools if I were to go to the States for like softball or anything. The problem is like no one has, especially like D2 schools, which is like maybe more attainable. Like it's hard to find a good program, and balancing that like now here, and we'll get into why you switched here, but like this is for sport media, especially like this is the best option. And
it's the place to be, honestly.
Yeah, especially like, and now you're in a city, so you get that experience too.
Exactly.
It's like basically mini New York here.
Exactly.
But yeah, so then your time at St. Cloud, and then maybe what led to switching.
Yeah, so what I thought was like such a great thing for me. So again, I was committed by the time I was in grade 11. I went into grade 12 like being like, okay, perfect. Like it's so like no stress, just get to relax. I ended up having like a massive injury, like when I think I got injured December of my grade 12 year, and I ended up being out for like 8 months with like a really bad shoulder injury. So that had a knock on my confidence all around. Like my confidence always stemmed, like even outside of soccer, from the field. If like I knew I was always the most confident on the field, and that just carried over into my everyday life. And then not being on the field, I really struggled with that for a lot, and I worked really hard to get back to it. And I didn't really want to tell my coaches either that I was injured, because it was like, I'm going to this school. Being a goalie, of course, is also very different. Positional players, you can get minutes here and there, but a goalie, there's like 3 or 4 of you, and only one person gets to play all the time. So that already was a big worry in my head, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to say anything about this injury. I'm just going to keep fighting back, whatever. I ended up recovering by the time I went there. It was all good. Didn't obviously have the season I wanted to going into my first year, so that was also tough. And before I left, like, I was already getting a little bit nervous to go there, as one would. And then when I went there, I had to be there at the end of July. So I literally had basically been out of like high school for like a month, like just under a month. And I was like, wow, like it was hard, like being like an 18-year-old kid at the end of the day. Like, I'm 15 and a half hours away from home by car, 2 hours from the airport. So it's like I couldn't really even, it was really tough. I'm going to be honest, like, to say I wasn't homesick would be a lie. It was tough to be. I come from a tight-knit family, so it was really difficult to be away from my family, and especially going through preseason, and it's a very trying time. You're practicing twice a day on the field, lifting, and it's just a lot. I also ended up getting injured, like, literally within the second week of preseason, and I literally couldn't walk. Like, it was just, I had my IT band in my knee was flared, so it, like, even though you couldn't really like see anything was wrong, just I literally physically couldn't walk, and it made it really difficult to be there. And it was tough not having everybody who was there. They were pretty close to like their hometowns, so a lot of family was around, and I found that tough. I was like, wow, like, the one thing I want right now is my family to be here. And when you go there, when you go to visit, a lot of things seem great. I get there, and the head coach said, who I had really liked talking to in my recruiting process, she tells us, and I knew she was pregnant going in there, but she said, I'm not taking maternity leave. She ended up taking maternity leave, and it ended up just being the assistant coach by herself, who was very new, and we had a lot of senior players on the team. And it was not the best team environment. So to be away from family, to be there with no support system, it was a very trying time, and my mental health suffered a lot. I have a great, obviously, support system at home, and I'd be on the phone with my family constantly, my brother constantly, so that was super nice to have, but it was always kind of like just pushing it off until the next time they were coming. And, like, I started excelling, like, I started getting back into my groove, like, even in soccer, but it almost, like, wasn't enough. Like, I still wasn't my confident self, and I obviously wasn't playing. Like, there was 2 senior goalkeepers on the team, and to say that I left there also because I didn't play, like, not the case. Like, I understand there's rankings and roles, totally understand it, but it was really difficult to, not even get to release. Like, for me, my outlet and my release was always playing, and I wasn't really even getting to do that. Practice was one thing, but even in practice, it was the older girls yelling at the younger girls constantly. It was very, like, high. It was almost like there was a hierarchy, and it was taken, like, way too, like, far. Like, nobody really liked each other. It was very toxic, and it was just a constant, like, everybody hated every moment of everything, and it was just a toxic environment, and it was really hard to be around. And I was like decently close with my roommate, but it was kind of a scenario where it was like, would this person be like my normal, like, support system if I wasn't living together? And she was super sweet, and I could not say any bad thing about her, but it was just tough because I didn't feel like I had that person to, like, confide in, and I felt like I was really alone. Like, I described this, like, to, like, my parents, and I spoke with, like, a social worker there too, and I was like, I have, like, 29 people around me, but I've never felt more alone in my life. Like, I just felt like a shell of myself. And I remember talking to the coach, like, after preseason, they have meetings with everybody, and I went into my meeting, and she was like, so how are you? And I literally just broke down and started crying, and that's my immediate reaction anytime, like, I'm upset. I'm a crier, but she was super supportive at first. Like, she was like, you know what? Like, we're going to get you all the help you need. I'm here anytime you need me. Anytime you want to talk, my door is always open. So I left that meeting. I felt so like supported. I was like, great. Like, called my mom. I was like, this is great. Like, Coach Jade's going to help me. Like, on it. Awesome. Like, and then things just kept getting like harder and harder and harder. And I was just like, again, like a shell of myself. And I remember I reached out to her one day and I was like, hey, I'm really struggling. Do you have time to talk? And she immediately called me, and it was like a morning. I'll never forget. It was like a Monday morning. And she called me and she was like, hi, like sounded like so pissed off. And I was like, okay. Like, I was like in tears already. Like, she was like, is everything okay? And I'm like, like, I'm just like really struggling right now. Like, is there any way you have time to talk? And she was like, do you want me to meet you at the, I don't really remember exactly what the building was called, but it's where you send people when they're suicidal.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, this is coming from the person who told me you can come to me with anything. We're your family. And I'm like, and your first resort, I haven't even said a word, and your first resort is to be like, just push you there.
Yeah.
Like, that's not it at all.
Not the support I needed.
Not the support I needed. And I was like, wow, like, she really doesn't care when it comes down to the time. Like, so I called my mom after that phone call, and she was like, that's it. Like, she was like, that's like your final straw. And I was like, yeah, like, I was struggling every day. I was waiting for the next day. Okay, my mom's going to come visit me at this time. I was wishing my days away.
Yeah.
And I, again, just didn't feel like myself. Like, I literally felt like a totally different person. And I remember telling my mom that, and she's like, no problem. She's like, call her in for a meeting. She's like, tell her, she's like, my mom had also come earlier on a few weeks before. This was halfway through the semester. My mom had come a month in, and she said it was like Labor Day weekend, and she surprise visited me because I really needed it.
Yeah.
And she had said, okay, you have 3 options right now. She's like, 1, you can come home, you can go to school in Toronto. Like, she's like, I have no issue with it. 2, you can go to your brother's school. They'll take you on the soccer team, like, right away, like, no doubt, whatever. And you can start Labor Day, like, right after Labor Day. Or 3, you can stay here and continue to try to push. And I was like, absolutely, I'm staying here. Like, I'm going to push till the end of the semester at least. Like, I'm going to get there. And then fast forward a month or 2 later, that was not the case. I kept wishing every day away. I'm like, this is not healthy. So I went in to meet with my coach, and I told her everything. And she was like, well, people change when they come to college, so we'll try to do 3 things to help you. We'll give you a friend, and we'll see how things go after this. And I'm like, oh, so you didn't listen to a word I said. She's like, you're really improving in soccer and everything. And I'm like, that's not the problem.
No.
And then she was like, okay, so speak to the sports psychologist, and then we'll come to a decision after this. So I called my mom. I was like, she didn't listen to a word I just said. So my mom's like, give me your phone number. I'm going to call her right now. So my mom called her and just completely said everything that I said again. And it was like, I'm not taking no for an answer. Like, she's done. And I still spoke with the sports psychologist that day to fully, like, say everything that I was feeling, because I was like, I already said I'm going to go. I'll go. And funny enough, 2 weeks before, there was a lot of issues on our team, obviously, with the environment and everything. And my coach recommended people to go see the sports psychologist, and I wasn't one of them. And I'm like, how in your right mind, if you know me so well, are you not recommending I go? I'm visibly struggling right now. Like, like, it was obvious. And so I was like, you know what? I'll speak to him now. Like, sure. He validated everything I said. He was like, you need to go. I said, I don't feel like I'm valued here. I don't think this is a place where I can thrive. Like, I'm a shell of myself. And again, I was like, the best way to describe it, I've never felt more alone in my life with so many people around me. And he was like, you need to go. You're worth so much more than this. And I'll, like, hold on to those words for a long time, because it was what I needed to hear. And at first I was like, am I quitting? Am I this? But that really just validated exactly what I knew in my head. So he was like, yeah, go. He was like, do it. Like, get out of here. And I was like, thank you. And my parents were there immediately. They were the most supportive people ever. And this was not for, like, a lack of trying, of being there. It was something that wasn't healthy. And it took a lot of strength to kind of leave there. I remember the day I was leaving, I was returning things to the library and whatever, and I saw a teammate of mine, like, run up to me. Like, I saw she had a class outside or something, and she ran inside. And she was like, she was crying, and I was like, I was never really like that close with this girl. So I was so confused, and she was like, I just want to say to you, I'm so proud of you. And I was like, for what? Like, I was so confused. She's like, nobody thinks you're weak. You are the strongest person on this team for leaving. She's like, this is not a good place to be. This is not a healthy environment. She's like, nobody is happy and nobody wants to be here. She's like, everybody is too scared to leave. And thank you for doing that, because you just changed that for so many of us here. And I was like, wow, like I never took it that way. And then I started crying, and I was like, thank you for saying this. Because in my head, I was like, wow, I look like a quitter. But it was quite the opposite. The easier thing would have been to stay there and just continue to go through that. But I made the harder decision to come home. And I'm proud to say that after me, like 15 girls left the team.
Wow.
And yeah, by the end of the semester. So I was
By the end of the
by the end of the semester, I was like, wow. And then more followed after the end of the year. So I came home, and it was a very, very trying year. It was like I always had kind of where I thought I would be.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? It's okay to restart. And yeah, that's kind of, again, the long-winded reason of why I left there.
Yeah. And then coming home, you just took the rest of the year.
Yeah, so I not even, honestly, in my head I was like, I'm gonna go right back to the US. Like, I was like, in my head I was like, I'm going back. Like, I'm like, there's no way. So I was able, my mom's an amazing person. She was able to like literally get everything done by the time we left there. She called the school. She was like, I want somebody there, an academic advisor there, to help her switch all her courses to online.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I were to just drop everything, I'd be ineligible to play the next year.
Okay.
So even though I technically didn't play in a official match, I played preseason, whatever, It was technically a redshirt year.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to transfer my courses to online, finish those out, get those courses, and be able, if I wanted to start at a new school in the winter.
Yeah.
So I went to a school in New York, and when I came right home, like I literally 2 weeks later, I went to a school in New York, and I was like, I love this school, awesome, love this place. My cousin played on the men's soccer team there, and it was like everything I would have wanted, it like prior to going to St. Cloud.
Yeah.
And by that time, I was kind of like, I said to the girls, I was like, yeah, like, awesome, it was a great visit. And I was like, 90%, guys, I'll see you in January. Like, this was November, and I said 90%, I'll see you in January. Like, I'm coming here, like, obviously. And it was a great school, and it looked awesome. And then I was like, you know what? Like, to my mom, I was like, let's see what's here. I knew the coaches at U of T, through the soccer world. So I called them. They're like, like, we have 4 goalies. They're like, it's not really worth it. I was like, okay. And I was like, at the end of the day, the only program I'd be like happy to do is sport media or sport management.
Yeah.
So I reached out to the coach at TMU, and it was the interim head coach at the time, Coach Johnny, who is my coach now. And I emailed him, and 2 minutes later, right away, he texted me, and he was like, come to a practice. And I was like, okay, cool. I went to a practice like the next day, and I was like, I instantly like fell in love with his coaching style, and I was like, wow, like, I love this. Like, I was like, forget that school that I went to. I was like, I don't know that I could put myself through all that heartache again. So I was like, you know what? Like, I loved this practice. And I remember talking to him at the end of the practice, and he was like, you want to come here? And I was like, yeah, like, why not? He's like, okay, perfect. Like, and I was like, okay, that's it. Like, let's do it. And it was kind of like crazy. He was like, literally, like, at this point, he's like, literally, you can practice with us like the rest of the season. You can practice with us in the off season, like almost as if you're a part of the team. And like in my head, I was still like, okay, like, even though I had said like, yeah, I'd come here, like, whatever, I was still thinking about the New York school. And I was like, I knew that coach was like, oh, she's coming here, like, great, like, whatever. And then I was like, you know what, like I just got like a feeling where I was like, this is like where I'm meant to be. I came to take a look at the school, and I was like, wait, like, I could see myself. I was like, I love the city. I love, like, I'm like, I already went to the small little campus school, like, in the middle of nowhere. I'm like from like 20 minutes from downtown. I'm like, this is so my speed. Like, this is everything like that I'm about. And I was like, you know what? Like, why not? Like, let's do it. And then I took like literally some courses through Chang School in the winter to keep my eligibility again and have some courses under my belt. But yeah, that's kind of the unorthodox way that I found
ended
here.
up here.
Yeah.
And then, so this season that just ended was your second season with the Bold, and just kind of talking maybe briefly just about the time at TMU. And I mean, you guys have set program records this year. If we want to dive into that, you guys have had the best finish in a regular season this season out of the entire TMU women's soccer program history. So just talking about how maybe you went from not as good of a team last year to what's worked well this year.
Yeah, so definitely last year again was like a really rough year. And, I saw like little flashbacks of like what I was experiencing at St. Cloud, and I was like, whoa, like I did not leave that school to come right back into this. And struggled a bit with like, we had a lot of older girls, and like it was like half older, half younger. So it was a really like struggle to like mix everybody together. And the team culture was just not there, and it resulted in the poor results last year. It was evident in the results. And then fast forward to this year, it started, I would say, like in the off season. They were like, "Kate, you're gonna play summer soccer together." So most of us played together. For our assistant coach, who we went back to being coached by our head coach Nat last year, and our assistant coach Johnny, and he and Johnny coached the majority of us in the summer. We played for a club called Scrosopi in the summer, and we just gelled. Like all of us were like attached at the hip together all the time. I mean, we played like 18 games in the span of like 2.5, 3 months. And we were together, we practiced every night. And even when we didn't necessarily have practice, we were all at the field. So we, like a good core of us, I would say like 6 of us at least, like worked so hard all summer and didn't stop. And we took that into this year, this fall season that we just had. And, like the core of us that were playing on this Grisopi team, Coach John kind of like woke us up. He was like, listen, he's like, you guys need to like fix yourselves before you head into like this TMU season, because he's like, it wasn't good enough last year. He's like, and you guys can be a difference maker. And he kind of like gave us tough love, and it worked. And for the weeks that I hated him in the summer, it like, I thanked him by the end. I like literally cried and thanked him, because he literally pushed us. And 4 out of the 6 of us, we were part of the leadership squad this year with the Bold. And I think like we just completely changed the culture. Like the whole team just bought into the mentality of being a family. And Coach Johnny was also our head coach again this year, because Coach Now was out of the picture with some health issues. She was still around in the background, but he literally he had our backs for everything, and he pushed us and expected, not even just expected, demanded like our best. It wasn't like, as long as we competed and we fought, he was happy. Didn't matter the results, but it ended up being positive results. And I think from the first moment of the preseason, we kind of just like, the leadership group and we kind of were just like, let's make this different. Like, let's make this a year that we can all remember. And I think we did exactly that. Like, it started from off the field. Like, we just bonded so well. We had like 14 first years come in, and it was tough at first, but like, they're so young and impressionable. And even though we don't like have the most senior players necessarily, like I don't consider myself like a senior player, but you almost have to step into that role of one. And we literally had a second year being a captain. Vanessa, one of my best friends and center back who plays right in front of me, she was stepped up as such a great leader. And it was great to see that it's like, it doesn't have to be a 4th year or a 5th year player stepping up. So I would say our leadership and just like the backing from Coach John and everybody buying in resulted in us like doing well. Our goal was to win the games we were supposed to win and try for the games that we weren't supposed to. And we won every game we should have won, and won some games that we on paper probably shouldn't have. And we just continued to push all season, and just it was like a relentless mentality. Like, if we can outfight the other team, then we're good.
Yeah. So, and then obviously you guys lost in the first round. We won't talk too much about that to U of T. Tough matchup. Mm-hmm. But how do you take everything that went well this year and build on it for next year?
Well, yeah, like even like reflecting on what we did well and even what we didn't do well. Like we accomplished so much, but we're not done. Like it doesn't just stop there just to say we accomplished it. We Sorry.
You're good.
We I just keep feel like I'm talking in circles, but um we worked so hard, but there's so much we could improve on, like technical wise. I don't think we were technically the strongest team in every matchup we had, and I think there's a lot of improvement there, and it's so like hopeful to see. But now we have a standard. Before we didn't have a standard. We have a
Yeah.
standard. It's you have to put in the work in the gym. You have to put in the work with like taking care of your body, getting the treatment you need, and showing up, not just showing up at practice, but showing up and putting in the work, being early, doing the right things before and after, like staying at the field after, asking the right questions, watching film, and just seeing what it takes even in the off season. The season is so short and it comes and goes so quickly. It's our summer season, which is our League 1 season, is it is longer than our TMU season, and it's putting in that work when you think that the time is done. Like the summer I had at least 2 games a week, and I never missed one game. I was there and I played every single minute of every single game. And I think just building off of that, I think now we have a great group where this mentality is like being influenced on, especially the younger girls, and they're going to take it into this off season and take it into the summer and bring it back for next year. And even like losing in the first round, I think like we accomplished so much by hosting our first ever playoff game, and we battled for the whole game even when we were down. um I think we overcame so many things, like key players being injured, and I think it just shows that we have that relentlessness in us. And I think with us improving our team chemistry, our team shape, and technical skill, I think we can only go up from there.
Yeah, and then we'll move briefly just to coaching. So from that, like you were saying, you have a leadership team on TMU Bold, or leadership. Yeah, you're on
Yeah,
the leadership squad,
yeah,
whatever you call it.
yeah.
Um, and so I mean that's similar to coaching in a way. You're being a leader, but how did you kind of get into coaching from such a young age?
Yeah, so when my parents took over Brace Football Academy, I was like kind of like not forced into it, but like it was there, so it was
Yeah.
like why not? And I feel like as a goalkeeper, like you're such a vocal role on the field, so it's like you're almost like a mini coach. And like I've been a talker on the field since like I was young. So I was like, and I've always like had pretty strong game IQ. So I was like, I would love to pass this on. And my parents were like, why don't you try it? Like, why not just start with the younger kids? And I started with younger kids and then ended up coaching under 9 girls team a few years ago, and then I brought them up to U11 this past summer. And it's such a rewarding process. Like, I love working with kids, even though like if you were to ask me, like I'd be like, not the biggest fan of kids, but like truly, like I love teaching. I don't have the most patience, but like kids are so like they want to learn, and they want to like please you and impress you, so they're so knowledgeable. Like they love to just like take everything in, and it's so much fun to be on the other side. And it's like I take into account, like I'm like, okay, I don't like when my coach does this to me, but then so then I try not to do it to them, but then I also start to understand
Why your
why
coach?
my
Yeah.
coach does that, right? So it's like you understand both sides. And I think taking in like my knowledge from being a player and even continuing to be a player, like it was really key moving into the coaching side. And it's been a blast and I love it. I also like even like beyond coaching players, because I'm a goalie, like I've done goalie coaching with my goalie coach for the past few years as well. But moving into coaching players is definitely different, but it's such a new challenge and I really love it.
Yeah. And then we were going to touch quickly on your work with MLSE over the past 2 years. And I guess we can go quick, but we are.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Talk for so long. Oh my
It's
gosh.
good. It's good talk.
Um,
But yeah, we can quickly just kind of how that started. And then I know you were in a different role 2 years ago to what you are now. So just kind of how that progressed.
yeah, so I started off with the Toronto FC game crew. So I literally just saw it, like actually somebody I coached with was like, hey, you should like apply to this, like you'd be really good. So it was literally just like something so fun, like just helping with game day operations, game presentation, fan engagement. And it literally has been such a blast, like getting to go to every TFC game, like working with kids, kind of like I do in coaching. Like I literally feel like I'm always working with kids and I do really love it. Like positioning them on the field, making sure everything looks seamless, and just helping around with the field and making sure everything looks great. And also getting to watch. Like, you get paid to be at a TFC game. Like, it's awesome. Like, no complaints there. And then growing from there, like, I'm always like up for a challenge. Like, I love growing, and I don't really like to be too comfortable in things that I do. So I saw there was like the opportunity to move up to the activations crew, which is doing like kind of a similar role, but for more, it's more broad. So like with all of MLSE and all their different events and special things that they host. So I'm now starting. I actually just started this week, actually officially after ending the TFC season. So I'm really excited to like dive into that and kind of like work with new people and work in new environments and experiences, and like transition from just like game day things to like seeing what goes on even in the background a little bit, preparing for those things, and being involved in new settings and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so you've gone to school kind of more on the operations side and on the media side, and you've worked in coaching, media, all the different kinds of things. What do you see yourself doing in the future?
Oh, that's such a good question. If you asked me this like 2 years ago, I would have been like, I'm gonna be this, that, like I'm gonna be a lawyer, this, that. I feel like I'm so like, I used to have obviously like a plan,
Yeah.
but I'm so open to where like life takes me now. I really do love coaching, and I never thought that you can make that a job, but like I would love to like, I still am really interested in going down the law route, and I would love to go to law school, but I would also love to like mix it in with coaching and be like a grad assistant and maybe head back to the US and coach and be a part of like a coaching staff in the US and also do law school at the same time. It'd be a lot, but you never know, maybe it'll work out.
Yeah.
Because seeing that like coaching could be a real career as well. So yeah, like definitely a big passion of mine is law and coaching. I would say I would love to work in sports law, maybe become a sports agent one day. It's always been a big dream of mine. But I do think that coaching is also a big thing in my future. So I am not 100% sure yet, and I think that's okay. But I definitely want to do whatever makes me the most happy.
Yeah, for sure. And that could be a bunch of different things in the future. You can hop around. A lot of people do in this industry. A lot of different things. Well, it has been great having you on today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. This has been the Shutter Sports Girl Talk podcast with Katie LeBoudelaire featuring Elisa Paolucci. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one.